Okay, it's 5:30. This is Tony. It's time to get started. So thank you for joining us today. And today I warned you we were going to talk about TAM, SAM, and SOM. And please go ahead and check in. So that's tonight, understanding the market, and then next Monday we will have a legal specialist, and we have two different legal specialists. One that specializes in tribal law, and one that specializes in sort of entity formation and regular legal aspects. And then next Wednesday, you get me again talking about pitch decks. And you don't have to worry about the rest of the stuff. Okay, so what is TAM, SAM, SOM? TAM is the total addressable market. And why is this important? If you're building a growing company, and you're looking for outside investors. The outside investors want to understand how big can your company get? How are you going to be able to penetrate that market? And so if it's a really small market, they may not feel like the investment is going to return what they're looking for with their investment. So, for example, it means you can have a perfectly lovely business. I have a friend who has a ski company, ski and snowboard for women who are performance skiers, shredders, and they need high performance skis and snowboards. And what a lot of the big manufacturers, the worldwide ones like Boston Wall and I can't remember the names of other ski companies, but I do know those. What they do for their women's line, they just make them smaller and then they make them more flower and colors. So my friend called that painting and shrinking for women. And so she designed her own performance boards and skis. But it's for women and it's for women who are performance skiers. Okay, so you've cut out half the population because it's for women, and then you're taking that percentage of skiers and making it for high performance women. It's a small market. So even though she does have investors, she had a lot of friends who were willing to invest early in her business, she's not going to garner big investors. She's not going to get millions and millions because there just isn't a large enough market to return the investment we have. So the total addressable market lets us know what industry you're in and how much the firm spend is. The available market is the market that you can serve, the service available market. So that is like a longer term goal for you where you are located. So it's longer term, it mitigates the risk for investors. It helps them to understand where your first market's going to be. And if that number is still large, it is a subset of the total addressable market. If that is still a large number, then an investor is going to be more interested in it. For a payable market, and this is the portion of the market that you can realistically target with your current offerings in the next 3 to 5 or 7 years, the time-bound period. So now we're getting very specific about what your goals are for your revenue in a short time horizon. So this is one where you actually end up having to do a lot of work because you're projecting your revenue. So that means, especially if it's 7 years, that means you have to understand what your product offering is, if you're going to come up with secondary products, if you're in one specific geographic area, what's your next geographic area? So it takes a lot of planning, and it takes a lot of projections to actually get to SOM. All right, and then this stacked Venn diagram, the circle within circles, is the easiest way to depict these numbers in a very concise way. So TAM is the largest circle, SAM is next, and then SOM is your portion that you think you get in your time-bound period, and whatever that is, your total expense. Question?
It's really hard once you get down to SOM to find data. I have other more difficult Because the TAM, a lot of data is both available and cost, so it's be best to kind of narrow down to what is available for us. That really becomes a little more scarce. How do you come across any tips for getting of that?
Well, for some of you, you're actually gonna do a lot of work on your own. You have to figure out what it's gonna cost you to make your product or service, which is a service, right? So you're gonna have to figure out, all right, how much time is it going to take me to find out all of the politicians in a certain area, because I remember that sort of thing, right? So are you gonna go for all of our county, or are you just going to talk about the city of Las Vegas and the city of Henderson? So the way that you're planning to attack the market will dictate what kind of research you have to figure out for yourself. And so when you're trying to arrive at a price, you're gonna have to do all this sort of accounting analysis yourself, building in the fact that over time, if you go into another market, you're gonna have to do that same sort of level of research. So keeping track of how much time it's taking you to figure it out. If we're going to be building newsletters for the politicians, how much time does that take? What does it take in terms of storage on a computer, compute power, those kinds of expenses? So you're coming up with not only your costs, but your projected revenue. And that's what your song is going to be, projected revenue in time down here. Okay, if you had a coffee shop, and in 7 years you wanted to have 103 locations, you would already be trying to figure out what is my next market? What city or location do I want to go to next? Because if you're just going to the state for a second location, the advertising can often be implemented. People can be more reluctant if something may cost you more, and the rent may be more, the wage may be more. So as you're projecting for this time-bound period, you have so much that you have to think up and do your research on. And of course, as soon as you start in business, it's going to go all out the window because then you're going to figure out what it really costs. Everything okay, Ness?
Can you push the button on your mic for me, please?
Which button?
The bottom button.
You see.
And then,
Oh, now it's off. Well, now it's green flashing. Yeah, so some of it's not easy. In fact, I think in this deck I have a picture of a baby crying because it's like, it can be frustrating, it's really hard, you're gonna do it, and then like 2 weeks later, you're gonna say, I didn't think of that, and now you've gotta like redo it. So, and that's how business is, right? I thought I had everything covered, but I forgot this one thing, like insurance costs a hell of a lot more than time. And then you're gonna go back and adjust.
Like out there to like, oh, this is the TAM, but it could be 1% of that market. The 1%.
Okay, so when people do that, when I see decks where they say 1% of this market, to me, it means they have done no research.
Yeah.
They don't understand anything about any of this money. They're just kind of grabbing the straw.
Yeah.
I saw one recently where they took 10% of Sam and 10% of that for songs. No, you haven't put in work. You don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
All right, so the stacked Venn diagram is the easiest way to depict it. I've seen people do it like an exploding sort of cylinder. Same deal. Just easy. All right, so why is TAM important? TAM saying something. We already covered that. Because it allows the investor to understand how big the market is. But even more important than that, it allows the business owner to understand how big the market is. And if you have a lifestyle business where you want to be able to employ some kids from the neighborhood, and just have a business where you're working in it and you're feeding people and that gives you the reason for existing, that's great, that's fine. But by doing market research, you will understand how hard it's going to be to capture market share. So these are some famous investors, and almost all of them are interested in the market opportunity, market size, these types of things. And they're interested in hearing about that early on in a pitch presentation or in a pitch deck, right? They want to understand how big the market is, and they want to see if you understand how important the market is to investors. All right, how do we calculate? So some people say it should be bottom up. Well, I disagree that it should be bottom up all the way. My position is you should do research on the TAM and the SAM, because people want to understand what the current spend is. How big is this market now? And then people like the world or all over the US or the total addressable market. And then TAM is going to be the smaller subset where you're going to start. If it's the whole state of Nevada, or if it's what county, or if it's the city of Las Vegas. And if you're in entertainment, the city of Las Vegas is huge, right? It's like there's a ton of entertainment that goes on there. So on the one hand, it's quite competitive. On the other hand, Vegas is always open to more entertainment styles and venues. So online is where you should start. Start with Google and ask, what is the market size for electric automobiles in the US? Okay, so that's a very specific thing, and it will give you an answer. But it may point you to a piece of research that the person who did it wants to charge you. If that's the case, if it's a statistic database or the other one, not LexisNexis, I just want. If it's either of those databases, I have a resource for you. You don't have to pay for it because the University of Nevada, Las Vegas has a research librarian whose name I'm going to give you, along with his email address. And you can ask him, and the more specific, like if you were able to actually copy down the email, the referral, the address for the website with that particular document and send it to him, he would be able to print it or send it to you. And so if you ask him to print a lot of reports, they charge you because he doesn't have. Okay, so that's the kind of research that we want to do for TAM SAM is research on what is already being reported as a spend in your category. So, and once you start down the road, especially if you get in touch with fashion, and it's not just electric vehicles, you want to know about the, let's say, the screens that are in electric vehicles, because they're much bigger than old cars. So you can drill down, and the more specific you can be when you're doing your research, the more specific you can get about the data that you have. So you don't have to start with electric vehicles, because what you really have to are these screens in the electric vehicles. So that's why I gave you this email address, so that you can point down a few words to explain exactly what you're trying to do, and then you can move it in research. Okay. External research companies like Gartner and Forrester, they charge thousands of dollars for their reports, and they're usually reports that are done over 3 or 6 months. And so it's really large companies that are going to do these kinds of research. It's like before a lot of the soda companies started acquiring the performance drinks and the energy drinks, they would do research to kind of figure out what the trends were. And then there was 5 companies that had already done that. So App Annie, on the business of apps, I don't believe that UNLV has these databases, but they may have because they're really broad. And if you are thinking about creating a software app, that is a very difficult market to break into because there are thousands and thousands of titles in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And it's hard to rise up, but we can do that. Okay, so now we have an example for Airbnb. And this is from their deck. And so there are some sort of legendary companies where their decks, their original decks are available. And this is Airbnb. And they presented to investors was way back in 2007. And they picked transportation, which is indeed their market, right? They started off as a car service in San Francisco because it was really difficult. No, I'm on your view. Sorry. Transportation. Oh,
It says Uber at the bottom.
this is Uber, but I wrote Airbnb at the top. This is okay. So I just added Airbnb tonight. Clearly, I shouldn't be doing it. All right, so this was Uber, and they were a car service in San Francisco because in rush hour it was impossible to monetize. And so they had already identified a need, and they had some success in getting people to sign up, and it was like a private membership. And so they were thinking about taking this to other cities and trying to disrupt the taxi industry. So they did, in fact, pick transportation as their total addressable market. But transportation includes trains, it includes ocean freight, and it includes air freight. So it's everything in transportation. So back in 2007, that was 5.7 trillion. It is a really big number. 5.7 trillion back in 2007. And then to get to their addressable market, they did taxi and limousines. So this was just in the US. So they weren't worried about taxis in England and taxis in Europe. They were just worried about the US market. So they went from this huge 5.7 trillion down to 4.2 billion. But 4.2 billion is pretty big number too. So, and that was for the US with taxis and limousines. So they really honed in on what their business was like. And then for themselves, they did a best case, a realistic case, and a worst case. As there were not a lot of other companies that they could base their pitch on. They were among the worst in the business. So in their best case, they would be a market leader with 1 billion yearly revenue. Okay, 1 billion. I guess they figured they were going to take a lot of the market away from taxes. Right? Realistically, they were hoping to get 5% of the transportation for taxis and limos in the largest cities in the US. And just 5 cities where taxis are quite prevalent: New York, San Francisco, Chicago, and don't know what the other 2 cities are. Probably Boston. I don't know what else. Anyway, 5% of the top 5 cities. And in their worst case, they would just rename a 10-car, 100-client services San Francisco. Anyway, so we've all heard of Uber, we've all used Uber, and Lyft came in as a competitor. And so their revenue in 2023 was 37.6 billion. Okay, that is like 8 times what all of taxi and limo service was in 2007. This was just last year. And their current valuation, I check these every day. I do these presentations, I do check them on the day up. And even though it's been a rocky few days, their valuation is 137 billion. So, and now they've expanded, right? This includes UberX, Uber Freight. In some cities, they have Uber Scooter. So, instead of being in line, they're getting about this. So, they thought they could get to 1 billion in 5 years. I would say that in 2012, I'm checking on that number, they were more than a million. Here is our actual Airbnb example. All right. So it's called Airbnb because originally they were going to rent out an air mattress in a room. And they were in San Francisco again. They were very close to Moscow Center, which is their convention center. And it was really hard to get hotel rooms, you know, the convention would come to town. So they thought, we are short on the rent this month. Maybe we can rent out one of the rooms in our apartment and make some money. So they knew that if people were willing to sleep on the floor, on an air mattress, that these were not the 4 seasonal types, right? They're going to be budget travelers. But they still are desperate to go to the trade show. So they looked at how many books or trips were booked worldwide. This is 1.9 billion trips. And they looked at how many trips were considered budget and were booked online, they got to 532 million. And so they were thinking, oh, well, conservatively, that we know what the travel is in San Francisco, and so maybe we'll pick 10.6 million trips as our target. Okay, now, when I say I want it to be in dollars. What is the current spend? I'm not as interested in units, unless the units help me get to what the spend should be. So in this case, we see 10.6 million units, and we know that we're gonna pay an average of $20 on this trip. So the host is gonna make a certain amount of our fee is going to be $20, and that's for a 3-night stay for a convention where the guest is paying $70 a night. This is our fee. So this is what our revenue could be based on those 10.6 million units. And so they presented this as part of their deck. We think it could be a $200 million company in 2 years. There's a question, yes?
Melly.
Hi, Melly. Go ahead and unmute and ask.
Hi, Maggie. I actually have a question for you on this. I know you have a background, I think, in not food service, but sorry, it's on the front. So you have a background in gourmet food, yes, in marketing. My question is, if people were to do something like Airbnb, but for making their own home cooked meals, is that possible? And how people, like I'm Filipino, I would make like Filipino meals. I'm also a vegetarian. I would make vegetarian meals. So would that be possible to do? And is that, like you'd be going against like restaurants and stuff, fast food.
There are other competitors that have done this. So Fresh Express, and I can't remember the names of other ones. I think even Marcus Stewart got involved in it. And so there will be research available for you. And in that case, whenever you're looking at an industry that you would like to enter, you want to make sure that you have a unique factor. How would you be able to take market share from the existing players in that space? And so Filipino food may be something that's not on offer, or delivered fresh, cook at home types of meals. So I would look at that, and what was the other, it was Filipino and vegetarian. I believe that there are vegetarian options out there, and so you should look into that research for food preparation, delivery, meals. Patrick would probably be able to do the actual expression to this business.
But more like a peer-to-peer thing, like more local, instead of like the food is being driven from one state to the other to the next state to get to me, and like packaged in plastic, you know.
Oh, all right. So you want to be freshly delivered how often? Once a week for 3 meals, or once a week for however many meals somebody wants to subscribe to?
Yeah, something like that, but more local.
Yeah, I think that you can still look into that. And then the other thing too to look at for yourself is the health department. And do you have to be in a certified kitchen if you're going to sell to people like that?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. This lady had a question.
Can you talk a little bit about, because I heard, wasn't understanding, something about farm campus and closed campus?
Oh, okay. So the question is about a canvas, and that's called the business model canvas.
Okay.
And that was Farah's topic last week. She was starting Wednesday. And that is a way of thinking about your business, almost doing a business plan in a one-sheet form. And it's got 9 different blocks, 5 of which are customer facing. So that's what the customers, that's how you're going to build a customer.
I don't want to apologize for my wording. So I guess what I'm saying is that the way I know that I was what I heard is like the cold segment would be like if you're just going in coal, you're going to get 0.5%, but if you're going in a new product, you're going to get 2%. I think that that's kind of like a standard. Have you heard anything like that, or
I don't know what industry you're talking about.
any industry? You go in coal, you're going to look at 0.5%.
And how would you make it more?
If it was like a niche that measured product.
I have to admit that I don't really know what you're talking about, unless I'm thinking that it has to do with positioning your product in a different industry from where it started, which is, it's harder to break into. If people are familiar with the product, like for example, with Melly, they've had Fresh Express or whatever Martha Stewart calls perfect, and then they can see, oh, there's a local option. It's going to be even fresher, and it's going to be Filipino and vegetarian. I'll try that. So the market has already been prepped a little bit for something similar, and that's why you would expect to have an easier time bridging into that.
So I guess I was missing certain formulas for that, because I was thinking, how did they decide 5%? And when I remembered that formula, I get aware is in fact and the decimals in that line that 2% and 0.5% of calculated investment. I guess smaller businesses.
Okay, so we'll continue with this talk. I don't know about their stats, and I don't know where you heard them. I would look online for them. But what I'm going to suggest when we do get to the song and talking about that is you worrying about your own business and building your table market based on some assumptions. And that's all we're going to do is base it on some assumptions. But if you want to do the customer discovery that we talked about on Monday, then you have a better chance of understanding there is going to be a demand for your product or service. So I don't think that that has been sent out yet from reporting, but it will be done. All right, so this is, oh yes, of course. Oh, what did you find?
I don't know what's one of those is somehow good size, less, but then when it like goes down, it's like it goes down. We're talking about something different than what I would do.
Okay.
And so I really feel nervous to begin with the concept or idea of starting a business for something that really isn't in a market yet. But I would like to big idea. The thought is like, oh my God, we need drinking water.
Okay, and so your product has to do with drinking water.
Yeah, water. But the solution that I have is mostly illegal in most places. Why not change that? Because this is a real solution that you should possibly listen to. This is good for you. It's all cities are way in people die. Maybe there's another starting point or in. I don't know. Like if I don't have the system, particularly to it. It's like education said, you know, our whole city is going to go way up for years. But there's this huge thing, if there's not a lot of that, are there still investors out there that willing to go with something?
Yes, so something Arden is describing a service that she believes is illegal in most places because it's rainwater harvesting. And then you're asking if there would be investors who would be interested in it. So there is a group of investors, and they're called impact investors. And so they are the ones who put their money where their mouth is. They're worried about climate change, they invest in climate change solutions. And so there is a class of investor that would be interested in what we're talking about. And especially, water is a huge issue in the whole African continent. right? And so there are groups that are based here in the US and are trying to come up with solutions. And so I think there is a lot of assumptions.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's a college that have a lot of holes.
right, right. Right, but if it's something that you're doing naturally and it's safer than what the perception in the world of public is, then talking to impact investors may help. All right, and then you have a question.
I'm going to talk about to whoever it was that spoke out.
I think it's Melly.
It is.
I thought that peer-to-peer feedback a few years ago, and so basically that, and I have a friend.
Okay, so we have a love match here. We have to
Yeah.
get these two together so they can share information.
What was your name?
Carlos.
Carlos. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to finish up on Airbnb, they expected that their revenue would be 200 million by 2011, and in 2023, it was 10.4 million. So these are wild success stories. It's not going to happen yet. Now here is a much smaller example of how these two guys went and did some market research. They had this notion, and this was a long time ago, I don't know what year exactly, but I think it was probably in the late 90s or 2000s. So it's quite a while ago. And they had this notion that super sports fans would want to buy a jersey, and they would rent it for the season if they had season tickets. And so they go down this path trying to figure out if it was a viable idea or not. So there's no addressable market. They were in New York City. And so how big is their universe? Now, in reality, their total addressable market was probably the whole United States and the same 5 sports that they were looking at. They were really focused on whether they could make a living in New York by serving this industry. So they looked at 150 million Americans are watching the 5 major sports. And then, how many can I reach with my sales channel for their available market? And they stuck with New York. So 11 million New Yorkers watch the 5 major sports in some capacity. So to do their research, they went to Yankee Stadium and they talked to all sorts of people and asked them, would you consider renting a jersey of your favorite player and making it a more fun time to come to the park in that jersey, and it would cost this much for the whole season? And then you would return it to me, and we'll clean it, and we'll give you a new one for next year. So that was kind of the premise, right? Rented for the season. So their idea was that the season ticket holders were going to be the ones that were most interested in this. What surprised them when they were talking to the people at Yankee Stadium was that people wanted to rent them for just one day. They couldn't afford a season ticket, but when they did come, they would want to come in a jersey of the players so they were all hyped up for the game. And it also surprised them that the women were just as interested in the jersey as the men were. So based only on the Yankee Stadium research, they decided that 11.7% of the people that they talked to would have a strong interest. So 11.7% of 11 million is 1.3 million people. And then they decided that half were interested, based on the responses that they got, in the whole subscription period, but half were only interested in the paper rental, and they didn't have season tickets. So this is a little rework of the last slide. Okay, so it's very logically laid out. But now we've got Sam Solomon, the stacked Venn diagram. And here we're talking about numbers of people. The market size, right? The Americans that watch the 5 major sports, the New Yorkers, the 5 major sports, and then the 11.7% of the New Yorkers would be 1.3 million people. But they haven't put it in the terms of, I want to see it, which is in dollars. So they figured that of the 1.3 million, 60% is going to be one time, even more than they thought it's going to be And they went in thinking that most of them were going to be seasoned. But after talking to people, they discovered that more of them would rent at one time. 40% would rent it for the whole season. So they worked on their fees. So the one-time rental would be $50. And the season rental would be $250. Now, since that time, they have made it much easier for the teams to actually sell jerseys. Right? So now you can buy a jersey. Sometimes you can buy it for about $120. So maybe people are just going to buy it and sell it. So this was a kind of a show. Anyway, based on this, they came up with their revenue was going to be $169 million. And so that's certainly a nice, comfortable living for these two groups. But there were a lot of expenses involved too. But that's how they logically went through what they thought they would need. I don't know if they got invested or not. All right, so this is an example. It's a relatively current example. It's probably more than it's a company that started in farming and become invested kids. And this is one of my favorites. Sometimes I go through bad examples of Samsung and good examples. So to me, this is a very elegant example. This company is called Outlaw Soaps. And they say their market is 80% of Americans. Well, how did they get there? And it's a $3 billion market. So this is what they show. It's a very beautiful picture. It's got very simple to understand numbers on it. And oops, apparently I'm running through the slide to tell you all about this. They know their product is liked by military people. It is liked by army drivers. It is liked by people that go to music festivals. And so through their research, they've added up these different groups of people who favor their types of products. And they have figured out that equals 8% of Americans and it's a $3 billion market. So their products are soaps and lotions, and they're a little bit out there. So their titles are things like Lust of the Dust and Blazing Saddles and Whiskey Something or other. So these are the kinds of things that you would think about if you were sitting around the fire and blazing saddles. This probably looks really nice the word fire. They do have one called Come on the Bridge. And so when you see the bottles, you can read them and understand like Come on the Range has fresh pine scent to it. And so you can't go out there outside. The Blazing Saddle does have still leather. There's a little whiskey scent to it. There's one that's smoky, it's very smoky. So it appeals to military people for some reason. But that's how they arrived at their beautiful slide. Okay. So the target customer profile, we're switching gears a little bit here. So that was Samsung. I'm sure there are more questions about understanding the market. We can go to the target customer profile, and that's what the gal's name is Danielle. Danielle and her husband started that Outlaw Soap company, and she was a marketing person who worked for Oakland. And so she's just one of the most brilliant working people I've ever met. And if she comes and does a talk for you, she's wearing a Western dress, she's wearing a cowboy boots, she's got a hat on. And the dress will have a print on it that will have the horses, horse scarves, and the hat will be very on theme. And so she is one of the people who would be able to actually develop a big food. Then she did her customer profile. I don't know when they actually started marketing, but they did identify the military first as one of their customers. And also farm drivers. And so the farm drivers, they go to service in August and they drive in. There are several of these that are driving around the country. And so if you want to talk to your customers, you go to where your customers are. So they do a lot of research at these things, and they noticed that they were getting a lot of military customers, and so they would go to Killeen, Texas, and look at Air Force trains and stuff.
And they would talk as much as they could to their customers to find out why they were buying, how their products were guilty. So through this research, they're able to develop a customer profile. And when you start out, you may not know who your customers will be. That's why we do customer discovery. And once you find the people who say that they would be willing to pay for your product, and they're willing to pay something that seems like you can make a profit on it, then you want to continue talking to those people, find out about their lifestyle and their habits, and see if you can refine the persona for that type of person. Then it'll assist you in marketing to more of those people. So psychographics, what they think, we ask them about that. You'll want to know what they do for a living and how much time do they spend with their children and what kind of outside work activities do they engage in. You'll be able to develop a customer profile in that way. Knowing your competitors is very important because you want to be different from your competitors. People talk about co-opetition. Co-opetition is where you have a competitor, but you're different enough from that competitor that they do their thing and you do your thing, but you're still sort of sharing with the customers. You do want to know who your competition is, and this is the same sort of research that Patrick and UNLV would help you with. Any of those reports that we talked about earlier will list who are the major players in your industry, and that's who you're going up against. That's one of the reasons why making a phone app is so difficult. It's because there are just so many competitors, and it takes a lot of money to make somebody switch from one to another. Unless you have something that's really novel about it, something that's really different, it goes faster, it has better prizes, it's more entertaining. So you need to know who your competitors are. Indirect competitors are ones that are sort of, they're not direct, but let's say that we want to do Nelly's fresh food. So your competitors are the other fresh food companies, but they're also the fast food companies. So they're not doing exactly what you're doing, but they are taking care of the basic need that people are going to use. Like, I'm hungry, I need to eat something. I need to feed my family. So am I going to develop it from scratch, or is this going to be easier and faster? If I'm very busy, I want the faster solution as long as it takes something that's healthy. So your competitors can be status quo, not doing anything. So you should never try to tell somebody that you don't have competition, because you do, even if it is just status quo, not doing anything. Then we want to exploit our competitive advantage. So Nelly has an keto food, and it's delicious, and it's easy to cook, and it's foolproof. The recipes are foolproof. So you want to know your competitors well enough to say how we're different from them and better than them. Okay, and these are the different things that you can work on to be different from your competitors. You can have really high customer touch, really high customer service. It's a niche market, unique distribution. You're organized really well. You deliver your food on time every time. So that when the person says, I will have this window at lunchtime on Tuesdays, and you're there, you're going to have a stellar reputation if you want to make sure the food is there at that time. Okay, this is called a wrap up. So with a wrap up, you're showing who your competitors are, and you're comparing your best features with the ones that they're not so high. So you would list the different features along one side and the competitors all across the top. You can put it the other way too. And so some of the self-things here that are happening is when you have a price, if you put an exact price in, you're going to check it. So you're doing a presentation, it's like, we cost $3.99, they cost $8.99.
If you don't check it every time you do a presentation, like I did for the revenue for Uber and Airbnb, then you can get in trouble. And people, you know, it's a situation you never want to make the audience go, I wonder about that. And then have them pick up their phone and check on you because now they're not listening to you anymore for one thing. And for another thing, if you have to check to make sure that it's still accurate, then you're going to lose them with trust. Yes, Mom.
Hey Maggie, are these slides going to be available for us?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I just got a message from one of the people that's like, oh shoot, I'll send you this and then the slide, but thank you, you're good.
Oh, okay. All right. And so one of the others, so by using dollar signs instead of actual prices, you can represent where you fall in the price spectrum without having to check it every time you do the presentation. And then the check marks are usually bigger than the X's. So if you have this feature to be bigger, you can even make the check marks that the other competitors have, make them smaller. Just so your stuff looks bigger and better. And if you are going to use a backup like this, do be sure that you pick the most prevalent competitors. Don't pick the smaller ones because people can pick up their phone, put in, I don't like it, pre-made meals. And whenever Google is going to serve up to them, they're going to think that those are the most common competitors. So you want to make sure that you address those that are going to show up in a search. Otherwise, people think that you're cherry picking who your competitors are instead of showing who these competitors. Okay. So that's pretty much it. All right, so here's an example of one that I like. So these fellows were students up at UNR, and every year UNR has a competition called the Dante competition. It is funded by Virginia Tech, and they give a $50,000 prize every year. So it's a prize for the company that does the best through a multi-layer process, and then does their pitch presentation. So these fellows were taking a diploma, and they were converting it into a solar-powered camper that also had really sturdy interior to it. So they were using marine level interiors. So they're waterproof, they're well made, they're used to be battered on the sea, and they had all sorts of features in it. And they were doing it on a small wheelbed of the Tacoma. Some of these other vehicles are quite large. So they're showing the actual price comparison and then the feature comparison. So here's a case where this check mark is bigger than this. So this was a really nice depiction of almost all of the options for off-roaders who wanted to. So the marine grade components and finish, the weight, and the size allow people to go to more remote locations than the river place. So they thought that was good. I don't do that sometimes. So that was a good example. And do you know your industry? That's why we need to know your research. So that when somebody asks you questions, you can answer them. And I will give you kind of on the two more slides. Also, you'll see on some slides CAGR, compound annual growth rate. And so if you have a CAGR that's more than 5%, that means that your industry is growing. So that means that there is more potential. If you have a lower number, then you're going to have to steal competitors from, or steal customers from the competitors. When the pie is growing, there are more customers to go. What's your product or service and your mission and value proposition? So the value proposition is the one or two lines that talks about your product and what it does for your customer. It's not how it functions, but it's what it does for your customer and it makes them want to buy it. It saves them time. it makes them more efficient. It gives them that time to, for their families. It takes a problem where you have to call in an expert and you have to wait for that expert, and it makes it so you can troubleshoot your own problem. So you want to create a value proposition that you use your customers' words about how it solves their problem. You put it into your value proposition. That makes it real for the business. Here is the guy, take a picture. Patrick is a great guy. And if you tell him that StartUpNV sent you or I sent you, then he will help you with the best he can. And if he has a problem with you, like you're not getting specific enough, he'll let me know, and then I know I need to help you. So I come down into what kind of information. All right, so that is probably the end. Yeah. So here we are with the detective and the Slack channel. So any questions? For Samsung is the slide that a lot of people get wrong. And this methodology will give you the right answer. It's because it's an area that investors know most people get wrong. And what you have to be able to do is explain to the investor how you got to Samsung. So if you have research, particular statistical article, an IB's World article, Sam and Sam are relatively easy. You may have to explain how you went from the whole market to your niche. That shouldn't be too hard to explain. When you get down to, like, for example, the outlaw soaps, how did she decide that it was military people who write Harleys and go music? Because she did research. And then she can pick apart, well, she goes up to that by taking those different populations and adding them together and figuring out what percentage of the American population it is. And so she has a very logical way of explaining how she did the research. And that's just what we do. How did we get it? Not like 1% of whatever, or half of a percent. It's just a guess. With your attainable market, you're building it as I suggested because of all of the work that was involved in finding out what it's going to cost to, where you're going to expand over time and getting into that time-bound period. If you can explain all of that to the investor, then they know that as soon as you actually put your product on sale, things are going to differ, and know that. But if you were thoughtful and can show them how you add A plus B plus C to get D, then they're fine with it. They may push back a little bit, but then as a founder, you want to know that, if you want to incorporate what you have to say, maybe it's something that you didn't think of. So, questions? Well, you'll have questions later. I'm pretty sure.
You know, a question, but a problem, like I don't think about competitors enough. I think like when it comes to like native business, it's there are a lot of competitors, like everybody's doing different things within that realm, like really. It'd be nice if there's like a lot more. I think this, of course, there were 50,000 neighbors in Las Vegas. What's everybody else doing? Like where are they at? You know, like it'd be nice to see what they're doing with their artists and stuff. But yeah, it's, there aren't too many like gallery spaces, like in Las Vegas, just in general. You know, there's only like a handful of us, which really. Yeah, it's not native galleries, but it's galleries.
Just galleries that are showcasing local artists.
Yeah.
So that's what you should be looking at for competitors. Like, where else might I put my goods where they would get a little bit more exposure? Maybe they're, you know, the other end of the valley. So, yeah, that's kind of piecing together.
Yeah, that was something I think about.
Oh, wow. All right, so next Monday, what did we say that the topic for this meeting? I know fish fest is next Wednesday, but what's illegal? We're doing legal things on Wednesday. Okay? Yes.
That's right, that's right.
It's a mistake. So, okay. Thank you all for coming and we should drop the, ceremony and we will chat some more with yourselves.
Thank you, guys.
You're